Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first ever speaker series on our Discord for Who's Got Next Music. I'm really excited to kick this off. It's been a long time coming. And for the first one, we are talking with one of my really good friends out here in LA, Sasha. Sasha, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you guys for having me.
Good. So thank you for taking the time to sit with us. Now, we have so much that we want to unpack. You know, you have an incredible background. So for those who don't know, can you tell us your background, how you got started to be a publicist, and how long you've been one?
Yes. So I started doing PR in 2010-ish, so almost 15 years now. I started my career interning while in college. Then I got my first job right out of college working at BMI. So I was in their communications and marketing department for about 5 years. I handled pop, Latin, R&B, hip hop, and film and TV. So I did the press for those departments, and they had award shows every year, and it was great. We honored like Mariah Carey one year, Mark Anthony. So I got to work with a lot of amazing people. Then from there, I ended up going off on my own and starting my own agency, SCP Digital, which is what I've been doing since 2017. And I've been able to work with talent, a bunch of record labels like majors, independent. I've worked with Universal, Atlantic, Interscope, distribution companies like Empire. I did PR for some festivals through Live Nation. And yeah, I've gotten a pretty wide range of music PR experience over the years.
Yes, you do. What made you want to get into PR?
I originally wanted to get into marketing, and I've always been more of a writer. So the marketing practice was more, it involved more numbers, and it kind of turned me off. So once I discovered that PR was an option, it just felt really aligned towards what I wanted to be doing and my skills. And I think that it's really interesting because it involves a lot of aspects of marketing, but also like a lot of psychology, a lot of writing, a lot of like journalism. So I think it's a really uh, cool job to have.
Yeah, well, you have so much. I mean, you're being humble too. Like some of her past clients are like J Lo, French Montana, Rock Nation. There's so many of them. So here on Who's Got Next Music, we really want to help artists, give them advice on like getting in the inside of the music industry and get them in the know of what they might not really know what they're getting into and what they need. So I wanted to talk to you about the top 5 reasons artists need publicists. So I'm sure there's more than five, but I would love to break it down where let's have you choose like the 5 points and then we'll break down each point. So what would you say the first point would be?
So the first one I would say is what I think most people think of when you mention PR, which is media coverage. And a publicist is really the person that is able to facilitate that coverage and put you in these conversations. A publicist that is specialized, I would say specifically like in whatever genre you're in, and has those relationships with those bloggers and those journalists and editors and radio personalities. It's really important because, especially if you're newer and more up and coming, having them reach out on your behalf to these people is like a cosign, and they're going to pay attention. So it's really kind of make or break with in regards to getting press.
Got it. As a publicist, what do you look for in an artist? Like, what's some do's and don'ts for someone to get your attention and to take them on as a client?
I would say one thing that I look for is if they have a brand established. So, is their whole look and their sound and the way that they present themselves cohesive? Uh, do I see like there's been thought put into it in the way that they post on social media, the type of photos that they're using to represent themselves? I also would prefer to work with someone that has an established manager, or, even if they're not an established manager, just someone taking care of like the day-to-day business aspect. That's not the artist. I think that that's important because, there's so much that goes into it. And then, of course, the music. I think that I have a pretty good ear to know, what is good and what isn't, what I think could work and what won't. And as long as the music is good, and you've already established somewhat of a fan base, I think that those top three things are what I would be looking for.
You said something that was really interesting. You said an established manager. So I think, especially when when artists are first coming into the business, and I think it applies even outside of music too, is they want to have their friend or a family member be the manager, which makes sense, as you're starting and you don't know which direction to go, or you don't have the relationships yet. But what are some qualities of someone who would not be an established manager from your perspective?
I would say, I mean, there are a lot of people that have used a friend or a cousin or whatever, and that person grew with the artist and developed into an established manager. But it has to be someone with the drive and the patience and the discipline to really learn the business.
Mm.
Um, at the end of the day, although, this is fun and, it's exciting and it's creative, it's a business. So if you're in this to, establish your career and make a living, you need someone backing you that is going to understand how royalties work, understand, what rate you should be charging to, do a performance, just all of those things that you really need to have in order.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think those are super important.
Perfect. So, okay, you gave us the first point, and that's having a publicist who's going to have the cosign. What is number two? The number two reason artist needs a publicist.
I would say brand building and image management. Like I mentioned, one of the big things I look for is someone that has put thought into their brand and, knows who they are as an artist and knows, what their music represents.
Mm.
Um, but working, with a publicist, they can help you kind of refine and fine tune your brand and, give you some suggestions like, okay, for this upcoming project that we're working on, this is kind of the image that we're going to portray and, present you as. Because, a lot of the biggest artists in the world, they have their core brand, but with each project they put out, they come with kind of a different image. Like Beyonce does this. Madonna was somebody who always did this. Yeah, so just being able to be strategic about how you're presenting yourself.
Okay. And then, as far as for the image and the awareness, you don't have to say who or like what client, but have you had an experience where someone was trying to push an image that really wasn't them, and it didn't click? And should artists do that or not do that for the sake of, trying to trend or be popular or get the numbers?
Yeah, there's someone that came to mind in particular, yeah, without giving away too much, was an artist that was, at the time, she was not something that you could put into a box, like as far as her sound, her genre. And she was signed to a major, and they didn't know what to do with her because they didn't have that kind of, comparison to make of like, oh, she sounds like XYZ. And I think because of that, she tried to conform and present herself in a way that did look like what was out at the current time. And it never worked. And it really negatively, I think, affected her career at that moment and also her kind of frame of mind. And fast forward a couple of years, that type of music started becoming more and more popular. And she then was able to come as, more of her authentic self.
Yeah.
But, you know, trying to conform and fit into, what's going on because you think that's what you have to do, I would advise against it. I think always, stay true to yourself and who you are, and also who your fans connect with.
Love that. Oh, I love it. What is the number three or the third reason artists need a publicist?
Crisis management.
Ooh, I like this one.
Yeah.
Let's have crisis management.
Hopefully, as the newer artist, you won't have to really deal with this too much. But I'll give kind of two different scenarios. When I had a more up and coming artist I was working with at a time, and he would vent a lot on Twitter. And, that was a conversation that I had to have with him because, it was like, you need to know that your socials are no longer your socials as a person. They are your socials as an artist. And you need to be able to separate those two things and be very careful about what you say because, number one, you could offend, a certain demographic and alienate part of your fan base. You could say something that then a couple months or a couple years later comes to bite you in the ass. So yeah, I would say for a newer artist, just be very wary about, the things you say online. You never want to talk negatively about anyone or any brand because you never know. Fast forward a year, that brand may want to, do a deal with you, and then they're doing their due diligence and they see you shitted on them. So be careful with that. But I would say, on a larger scale, obviously we've seen what's going on with like Puffy and, so many different situations where you need someone managing those things and kind of guiding you on how to respond or how not to respond.
Okay. And then or you said the two scenarios? So you give the one for the brand owners, or did you say both?
So more of like the up and coming artists,
Yeah.
like how to think about
Yeah.
avoiding and then the other one would be like more of an established artist that has something, crazy happen.
Got it. And then what is for those who may not know, I'm even curious about this, is like what's the process for crisis management? Like what's the first thing a publicist needs to do when a crisis just falls into their lap?
I think it depends on what the crisis is, but in general, if it's something, negative that has happened that the artist maybe is guilty of, or they had some type of participation in, usually at first, you would advise them, don't say anything. Stay off of your social media, just don't say anything until we figure out what's going on. And then if they are found as being part of the reason why this negative thing happened, you need to acknowledge it and issue an apology. Um, I think a lot of times we've seen people try to say that, oh, this was my fault, I wasn't a part of this, whatever, and then it comes to light that they were, and that makes it worse, So I think that people are more forgiving if you do, take responsibility and apologize.
Mhm. And then when you've had to be in a crisis management situation and you have to write the statement, how stressful is that to do that? Because that's the statement that you have to send to your client and then that's going to go out everywhere. So like on a scale of 1 to 10, how stressful is that?
12, 13.
And then how many times would you go over it? Because I think about even when I'm just trying to come up with a caption on Instagram, I will overthink it where I'm like, I think of 10 different captions. So I can't even imagine a statement addressing a problem to the world.
Yeah, I mean, things as simple as like a press release or a social media caption go through like countless revisions. So yeah, for something like a statement in a crisis situation, yeah, there's a lot of back and forth. But that's where like the psychology comes into it because as a
Yeah.
public, you have to think in regards to the public and what is their perception of this person? What is their perception of the situation? And how do we kind of counter that?
Mm. Yeah, that sounds intense. Well, what is the fourth reason an artist needs a publicist?
Events and uh, like event coordination and promotion. Um,
Mm,
so one of the things that I always do when I'm working with an artist and they're releasing a project is a listening party. And that's something that me and my team plan. We, invite everyone, we coordinate it, we're there, day of handling things. So the artist and their team is just able to show up. And again, we're utilizing our relationships to get people in the room.
yeah.
For established artists, that's a lot easier. But even then, people in the media are invited to so many different events. So it's like if I invite you to something, Jen, you're more likely to show up to my event than if another publicist that you don't really have a relationship with invite, you know?
Yeah.
So again, it's like with the media coverage, having that person speak and, make those connections on your behalf. And even outside of that, if the artist is on tour or they're performing like at a radio concert or something like that, having your publicist there, being able to facilitate those interviews on site and walk you through the media room. Yeah, those are things that people I think don't think about, but that are very important.
What's this just came to mind. So you were talking about different festivals, right? And taking them into the media room. And then sometimes when you are dealing with people who are doing interviews, there's certain things that are off limits. And
Yeah.
from what I've experienced, when I used to do like the festivals and stuff, and when I've been in the rooms where it's been very clear, don't ask this, you get this amount of time. I always made sure to not ask that and make sure to stay under the time. So what does a publicist do when someone in the media oversteps that boundary and it's in the middle of the interview? Like, what do you do if someone does it?
If it's something we've explicitly told the journalist to not bring up,
Yeah.
I will completely shut down the interview. Okay, like we're done here, thank you, and move on to the next.
Got
Because
it.
that's just disrespectful to me as a publicist and also to the client.
Mm. And then what if it wasn't something explicitly like discussed? Then what do you do?
If it's something that comes up that wasn't you know pre talked about, I would say maybe just I would just be okay. We're not going to talk about that next question.
Got it. That's good. What's okay, so I think those are really, really good points. What would you say is your last reason an artist needs a publicist?
I would say industry connections and just the overall opportunities that they can bring to you. If you are working with a publicist that's been in the music space, we have relationships not just, in the media, but also with people at labels, with A&Rs, with producers. So, we can make those types of connections too. We may have a relationship with somebody at a brand and we hear like, oh, we're looking to do some music marketing and, we can put the artist in run for or have them, be a part of a campaign. So
Mhm.
I think a good publicist can bring other opportunities to the table and, get very creative with what they pitch you for.
Yeah. And so those are really great 5 points. What I want to talk about, something you brought up in the beginning, where you said you transitioned from when you were working with the company and then you started your own agency. So if there's someone who's interested in starting their own PR and marketing agency, what's something you wish you knew before you transitioned into that?
Um, I wish I would have learned more about business in like the first couple of years. It's something that to this day I'm still learning things. But I think that, like the same thing with an artist, you know how to be an artist, right? I know how to be a publicist, but I didn't know how to be a business owner. So, like, a manager, they might know music. They might, be great in the studio and guiding the artist on, like, oh, do this ad lib or whatever. But they have to learn how to be a business manager.
Yeah.
Um, so I would say that you obviously need to know how to do the basic, publicity and marketing things, but Um, yeah, you need to learn like accounting and what else? Hiring, firing, contracts, HR, all of that stuff.
Mhm. It sounds like a lot. Well, I really enjoyed this conversation. Before you go, is there how can artists get in contact with you to maybe see if you would represent them as a client, or do you offer any services even outside of PR marketing?
Yeah, so you guys can find me on social media, either my personal page, which is my name, Sasha Pisterman, or my business page, which is at SDP Digital. And in both of those, I have links to my website and have like a form you could fill out if you're looking for PR representation. Outside of that, I do like consulting, or I'll do one-off projects. Like for a concert or for an album release, or whatever it may be.
Nice. Well, I'm excited that we were able to talk, even though we haven't seen each other in forever. I feel like this is our first conversation too, where it's like we really talked about the ins and outs
Yeah.
of the business. So thank you for being our first guest speaker for our Discord speaker series. It was a lot of fun.
Yes, and I will send you guys. I created an album rollout guide. It's 10 pages long. It goes into like different strategies and tactics. So I'll share that with you guys so you can share with your audience too.
Thank you. I
Thank you for having me. This is great.
think we're good.